Is it just me, or is PC gaming going through a bit of a slump right now? On the one hand, we've got $70 games, microtransactions, battle passes, and buggy PC ports just weighing us down. You name it, a recent release has got it. On the hardware side, were you considering a PC upgrade? Well, prices are up, performance is stagnant, and overall, you're better off just buying pre-pandemic hardware and saving yourself a few bucks. However, my friends, it's not all doom and gloom. PC gaming is going through a bit of a renaissance right now, but it's not with those fancy GPUs, 4K resolutions, or even AAA gaming. The driving force here is the innovation in the PC handheld space. Sure, the Steam Deck has opened the door, but a brand new handheld aims to deliver a high-performance experience to the mainstream. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the Asus ROG Ally. Hey guys, Trick here, I hope you're having a good one. I've collaborated with some popular creators asking what I want to see from a Steam Deck competitor. In an interview with Overkill, I said I was looking for improved performance in handheld mode while having extra room in the tank in docked mode. When asked by the Steam Pals, a collaboration effort from some prestigious Steam Deck creators, I advocated for Windows on a handheld and its superior software support. Well, with the ROG Ally, we genuinely have a competitor that delivers on all these fronts. But it's not all roses and high praise for Asus today. Though the Ally delivers on many fronts, there are plenty of issues to highlight that only scratch the surface of this device. The spec sheet is the first thing that piqued my interest in Asus's handheld. At its heart, it runs an AMD Z1 Extreme processor with impressive claims of improved performance over the Steam Deck. It equips 8 Zen 4 cores on the CPU and 12 RDNA 3 compute units for graphics. On paper, that beats many of the modern handhelds by far, but in practice, it can't really hit those advertised clock speeds. We'll get to that in short order. We have a fairly standard 16 gigabytes of LPDDR5 running at 6400 mega transfers per second on the memory front. It's faster than the Deck, but is now outclassed by some of the other 7840U handhelds on the market. But it shouldn't be an issue in the lower wattage scenarios that we're going to be running at. Storage is also standard with a 512 gigabyte 30mm NVMe drive, similar to the Steam Deck's top model. Asus has gone the extra mile and made it a little bit easier to upgrade compared to the Steam Deck. But if you want to upgrade your storage and not crack open your device, there is an SD card slot at the top of the unit. More on that in a little bit. I/O is comparable to the Deck, with a single USB Type-C port for charging and use with docks, along with a 3.5mm headphone jack. A cool feature the Steam Deck does not offer is external GPU support. Asus unfortunately uses their XG mobile interface here, so check out Retro Gaming Tech's video if you want to learn a little bit more about that. Hey, but guys, listen here. If this video gets 1,000 likes, my wife told me I could get the 4090, so help a brother out. Anyways, and the star of the show here is got to be the display. The Ally uses a 7-inch 1080p screen measuring in at 314 pixels per inch. Compared to the Steam Deck, that's double the number of pixels with 50% more density to boot. That, my friends, is a Retina display. The screen also boasts 100% of the sRGB color range, which is a massive upgrade compared to the Deck. And the cherry on top of this IPS panel, it can run at 120 Hz in 1080p mode. Now, the Z1 Extreme is quite an impressive chip, but there's no way it can regularly hit that frame rate in standard gameplay. The big deal here is the screen is rated for FreeSync Premium, with a variable refresh range above 48 FPS. As you can see, the Ally meets all of my expectations for a competitor on paper. It's got a superior processor, superb screen, adequate storage, and comparable I/O make it a suitable upgrade from the Steam Deck. Even compared to some of the more premium Windows devices, it cuts corners in just the right spots to make it a less expensive alternative. Even if the ROG Ally has the horsepower and the specs to win, that all gets thrown away if we can't stand holding the thing. The ROG Ally takes a different approach from the competition when it comes to holding the device, favoring a more shallow and relaxed grip than the competitors. The Ally only weighs 608 grams, one of the lightest 7-inch handhelds on the market. In contrast, the Steam Deck comes in at 669 grams. Both of these handhelds are well balanced, but as I said, the Ally is a bit more shallow. The deck is slimmer behind the screen, but its more pronounced grips give it a more substantial purchase in the hand. The Ally has a bit more gap between the inner fingers and the body, which rolls our wrists a bit forward, making it aligned with our thumbs. At first, this seems a little bit awkward, but after a few hours, it feels really relaxing to hold. With the Ally in hand, I get to my first major gripe with the device, the analog sticks. They are far too easy to move. I do like a little bit of resistance in my sticks. I like the sticks of the deck and the Ayaneo Geek far better than this device. To make matters worse, I don't particularly appreciate how concave the sticks are. I constantly find my thumbs rolling off of the sticks, especially since there's no texture or grip there for my thumbs. The deck is a bit better in this regard, but they are a little too flat for my taste. The Geek is leagues better when it comes to the analog sticks. ABXY buttons on the Ally are pretty darn good, and I don't encounter any of the sticky buttons that some of the early reviewers saw with my production unit. And given the Xbox controller-esque layout, I prefer this orientation to any other handheld. But again, the Geek's button click is so much more enticing. The Ally's just feel a little sloppy by comparison. Now, the Ally Start, Select, and Custom buttons are the best that I've encountered in a handheld. On the deck, Start and Select are okay, but activating the Steam and the Quick Access menu buttons is always a chore. For the Geek in the Ayaneo 2, finding the Start and Select buttons underneath my left thumb just feels unnatural. But the Ally gets it just right. Their placement is natural and easy to access mid-session. However, they might be too easy to hit in gameplay, but I'd gladly take that over either of the others. The D-pad on the Ally is probably B tier amongst the competition. Again, Valve and Ayaneo nail it with their cross-oriented D-pad and get an easy W. But the Ally's implementation of a circle pad works very well. I can hit early super missiles and ice beam mock balls in Super Metroid on the first try. I am by no means a speedrunner for Super Metroid, but I could never hit that trick with the AOK Zoe's D-pad. I did notice a few false upper diagonals, but it is a pretty decent pad for average gaming. Shoulder buttons and triggers are another solid W for the Ally. The Geeks are too long for a comfortable grip, and the deck's shoulder buttons get lost in the top of the device, making it a bit clumsy to hit. On the Ally, all is good. Decent resistance in the Hall triggers, and the shoulder buttons are easy to press. A minor gripe though, my right shoulder button kind of squeaks, but it's mostly worked out by now. The last buttons to talk about are the macro buttons on the back. On the Ally, they at first feel a bit out of place, but after playing around them, they are really easy to grip. I prefer this orientation over the Steam Decks, since I'm gripping my deck a bit harder, a bit more firm, which causes some false presses. Granted, I rarely use the back buttons on my deck, but at least with the Ally, they're mapped to useful macros like bringing up the software keyboard, minimizing to the desktop, and that sort of thing. The last thing I want to mention with Ergonomics is the fingerprint sensor. When turning the device on, I find it very difficult to find by touch, which forces me to type in my PIN to unlock my Ally constantly. They should have raised the edges around the sensor a little bit, just like the Ayaneo. The Geek's sensor placement is also far more reliable, and it doesn't require readjusting my finger or my hand to access. So I really enjoy the ergonomics of the Ally, with the Ayaneo Geek being a close second. But if you have smaller hands, the Ayaneo's is probably a better option. Now that we've got our deck and our Ally in hand, let's talk performance. The Ally has been out for over a month at this point, and man, it has been a roller coaster. There's been various firmware and hotfixes have come, yet we still can't hit the performance that both AMD and Asus have claimed. At 25-watt turbo mode, 1080p, and low settings, we can match the official 30-watt data for Far Cry 6. Borderlands 3 is also very close, coming in 6 FPS shy of the impressive near 60 result. But Shadow of the Tomb Raider, it sees a huge 30% miss, and Forza Horizon 4 misses the mark by almost 30 FPS. From the results here, we are nowhere near the 2-time performance of the Steam Deck. as expected in my 15-watt performance expectations video. Speaking of 15 watt, the only game close to the 50% better than the Steam Deck claim is in Forza Horizon 4. So it's safe to say that Asus oversold the potential performance of the Ally, but let's look a little deeper. For this review, I'm looking at 9 different games at 720p and 1080p in all 3 power modes. I'm going to be looking at GPU heavy, CPU limited, and some memory heavy and balanced games. With this much data in hand, we'll have a good grasp of how the Ally performs. First, let's look at 10-watt mode. In the Fox's latest deck analysis video, I can confirm his observations that the deck's Van Gogh chip starts to hit its stride at 10 watt and achieves pretty much all of its performance potential. Unfortunately for the Ally though, it's only just starting to wake up. Across the board, performance is tolerable for the Ally, with only Cyberpunk and Horizon Zero Dawn landing at sub 30 FPS. However, the Steam Deck consistently hits 1% lows nearly at the Ally's average frame rate. So without a doubt, the Steam Deck is far superior in these low wattage scenarios. But let's bump it up to 15 watt. In my previous analysis, AMD's older parts like the 6800U, they're only starting to catch up to the deck, but the Ally starts to compete head-to-head in this mode. In GPU-heavy workloads like Cyberpunk, Horizon Zero Dawn, and Far Cry 6, the ROG Ally can surpass the Steam Deck by up to 20%. In CPU-limited games like Counter-Strike, Grand Theft Auto, the Ally also continues to surge ahead, achieving a stable 60 FPS cap in GTA 5. However, Borderlands 3 and Shadow of the Tomb Raider highlight a deficiency in the Ally, and that's with mixed workloads. Borderlands 3 is notorious for being memory sensitive, and the Ally slides by 14%. Shadow of the Tomb Raider favors the CPU a bit more than the GPU here, slipping by 13%. However, these results are pretty close across the test suite, with the ROG Ally averaging an 8% improvement over the Steam Deck. Again, this proves Asus's marketing materially was utterly wrong. But what if you want to push your handheld to the limit? Asus has got you covered with its Turbo mode. All you have to do is press the Command Center button and click it on over to Turbo. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like the 67% increase in wattage helps the device in any measured way. Cyberpunk does see a 10 FPS bump, but that doesn't cross any playability thresholds. Horizon Zero Dawn nearly touches 60 FPS, but again, not enough for a consistent experience. Shadow of the Tomb Raider does cross the 60 FPS threshold, which does seem good, but more on that in just a second. And besides the improved 1% lows in Grand Theft Auto 5, 15 watt was already very playable, so the 25% improved performance is a bit of a waste. So obviously, the Ally thrives at 720p, but if you want to rock the native 1080p resolution, it's a bit of a mixed bag. For some games tested, 15 watts can get you a 30 FPS experience, but that might not cut it for some people. Bumping it up to 25 watts definitely helps, but that comes at a considerable cost. Let's dig into this resolution a little bit closer. The ROG Ally comes equipped with the same battery capacity as the Steam Deck, roughly 40 watt hours. For science, I tested both platforms at 10 and 15 watts, and of course the ROG Ally at 25 watt, and I ran that unplugged in Horizon Zero Dawn. With the Steam Deck, battery life is a straightforward affair. Running the device in 10 watt mode burns 19.3 watts of total system power, clocking in at just over 2 hours of battery life. Running in 15 watt mode gets us an additional 4 frames per second, but that costs us roughly 30 minutes of game time. The ROG Ally is kinda similar, well, sort of. When the game stabilizes, 10 watt mode consumes an extra watt compared to the deck, running just shy of 2 hours. 15 watt mode adds an additional 10 watts of total system power consumption, dropping us to about an hour and 20 minutes of gameplay. How about 25 watt mode? You're now draining over 45 watts of total system power, and that drops game time to only 53 minutes. Clearly, the Steam Deck is the efficiency winner here, but something is going wrong with the Ally. Looking under the covers, Asus configures the chip to run with elevated power modes for short periods of time, defined as SPPT and FPPT. If you want to learn more about those values, set your device up in manual mode under Settings and Operating Mode. If you hover over those options, there's a little tooltip that'll define them for you. What's suspicious here, though, is how long these boosts last. Under typical instances, the system can easily consume 5 additional watts for about 3 to 4 minutes of starting your application. This behavior makes all benchmark results highly suspicious, making it incredibly challenging to test the Ally accurately. For my testing, I waited for each game to hit its steady state, which wastes about 50% of my time with the device between benchmarks. I've got to say, that is really shady, but it doesn't even stop there. If you plug in the device, it looks like Asus turns on a completely different power profile. Now, I don't have enough time to go into complete detail here, but in Shadow of the Tomb Raider, I can gain an additional 9 frames per second at 25 watt mode compared to running on the battery. This behavior might not happen in all games, but it just highlights some of the oddities and issues I have with this device. If you want me to lead you guys down the rabbit hole, definitely subscribe to the channel. Asus has got some explaining to do with this device. Despite how negative all that sounds, the device performs just as I expected. Sure, it doesn't meet my full performance expectations, but it is directly comparable to the Steam Deck. And the cherry on top, if you want to plug in or dock your device, the ROG Ally has some extra horsepower to make it a compelling 1080p gaming device. With all that said, I really do like the ROG Ally. It feels great in my hand, and I constantly lose track of time when I'm playing on the couch, flying through some nightmare dungeons in Diablo 4. Its screen is a pleasure to game on, and the VRR display makes gaming a seamless experience. But what is most important for me is I have access to all of my games. Fortnite, Call of Duty, Destiny 2, FIFA 23, all the different games available on Game Pass, and let's not forget all of my favorite launchers are natively supported. There are no hoops to jump through in order to get my games onto the device. If you're worried about anti-cheat, it's just supported. There's no need to swap different Proton GE, experimental, go over to desktop mode, or any of those other hurdles that we have to do with our Steam Deck. The last benefit for me is the Asus customer support. Lately, there have been considerable upticks in cases where the SD card reader appears to break some memory cards. If this problem has you worried and you're in your return window, you can just go back to Best Buy and get it replaced. And if you're still under warranty, Asus has global device support. A little bit of behind the curtain conversation here, I now have had to send 3 different handhelds back to China for repair from OneXPlayer and AOK Zoe. So I am confident that if I have any issues with my Ally, I can get it sorted out with any shady shenanigans or outrageous shipping fees. On the flip side, the Ally does have obvious flaws. The device needs to address a long list of optimizations, from improved performance, upgrades to efficiency, and various software quirks that still need to be ironed out. And let's not forget about the device interface. Though Armory Crate is by far the best built-in launcher in a Windows handheld, Windows itself is a bit clunky to maneuver. Getting the device updated and set up can be rather tedious, but once everything's installed, Windows is better than many tend to lead on. Bottom line, I think Asus nailed it with the ROG Ally in delivering a true Steam Deck competitor. Coming in right at $700, I find it easy to justify the extra money over the top tier Steam Deck. You get the better screen, broader software support, and a better all-around dockable solution compared to the deck. The ROG Ally's aggressive pricing and emphasis on features critical to a gamer make it an easy pick over other Windows handhelds. Those devices from Ayaneo GPD, they might have better ergonomics, more storage and RAM capacity, and even better looking screens, but charging an additional $300 or more for that privilege, it's really a hard sell. If you are looking to pick up an ROG Ally, I've got some parting words of wisdom. If a game uses FSR, use it. I find running in FSR2 in performance mode completely tolerable in most instances. I find this mode is roughly equivalent to what we would recommend with the Steam Deck. That's 720p or 800p running quality mode or balance mode. So to repeat myself here, run your Ally with FSR2 in performance mode. Next, try to pick settings that keep your Ally running above 50 FPS. The VRR limit for the screen is 48, so optimizing our frame rate for a 50 FPS target will look exceptionally good, while potentially saving us some battery life as well. Last, if you want any more optimizations or have some more questions, definitely reach out to me over on Twitter @TheTurk. I'm going to be continuing to test the Ally here because I really think it's got a lot of potential, and there's a lot of really good games coming up that I think are going to be an awesome time to play on a handheld device. But thank you guys for sticking to the end of the video. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Later.